Hello and welcome. It is a pleasure to be speaking with you all today. And also wanted to start by saying thank you for spending some time out of your busy day to learn more about this artificial intelligence dilemma that we find ourselves in. And also a big thank you to Devo for inviting me to speak as well. My name is Ron Eddings. I started my career as a hacker. I pivoted into becoming a cybersecurity architect. And today I'm using everything I've learned along with the power of artificial intelligence to educate and entertain people on the topic of cybersecurity. And that's exactly what my company, Hacker Valley Media, does. We produce podcasts and video series on the topics that we know and love, like cybersecurity and AI. I'm excited to dig into this artificial intelligence dilemma that we face in security. Because if you've used AI, you'll know and you've seen the promise. It promises a boost in productivity. I think that it could also promise a boost in our resiliency for how we build our cybersecurity programs. But as cybersecurity practitioners, since we're always focused on security, where we put our data is always at the top of our mind. And also, how accurate is the data? These are things that we consider to be risks, and we're already managing a pretty extensive list of risks. So we want to make sure that whatever we use and onboard, we're using it effectively. An important note as I continue out through this presentation, you'll hear AI and artificial intelligence. I'll be referring to these two terms as generative AI, so keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that this tech is so new. It's hot off the press, so new that results and mileage may vary depending on what your use case is. So keep that in mind each step of the way. A good way that I like to figure out where AI can be helpful to me is reflecting back on my experience and taking inventory of all the things that I've done. I want to share a bit about my entry into cybersecurity. My first gig ever was working at Booz Allen Hamilton, and I love this company. I love them because they took a chance on me before I had my degree, and I only had a handful of certifications. When I got the job, they put me in for my security clearance, and I got so lucky. One, because I got my clearance, but two, because the client I was supporting was the National Security Agency. And my job at the client was to exploit and compromise devices and networks. This was my first job. And as you can imagine, I was really nervous. I thought this was going to be one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do and that I'll ever do in my career. But I was wrong. It was probably one of the easiest. It goes back to that age old adage of hackers, they prefer simplicity and they prefer low hanging fruit. My job was pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dry, and it could be broken out into four steps. The first step was perform recon on the target. The second step, review guidelines and policies. The third step, perform the operation. And the last step was write a report. So you get the idea. Find out who I'm going to hack, make sure I'm allowed to do it, then go do it, and then tell on myself if I didn't. That easy, right? We hear about the importance all the time of speed. And I bring up this workflow and speed because I could go through these four steps in a matter of hours. Even when we would make a mistake and make a mess, leave logs in the SIM or wherever the target was collecting logs, I was always baffled that it took IT so long to respond. And not only did it take them a while to respond, they rarely ever thought my security logs that I was generating were actually due to security. They thought these logs that we were generating were performance issues and application bugs. These would rarely be ever escalated to security, which made our lives and our jobs a lot easier. Hacking device after device, it can get repetitive. And there was one day I heard this voice in my head. It said, Ron, take everything you know about offensive ops and use that to stop the greatest hacks of all time. Take everything I know about offensive ops to stop the greatest hacks of all time. So in 2016, I joined Intel Corporation and I pivoted into the SOC. And I learned, wow, before I stop the greatest hacks of all time, I need to stop the most basic hacks of all time. If you work in a stock, you've seen this a million times. This is an alert. This came from some data source and it has information about the event. It has a summary, trigger, severity, timestamp, action, message, and hosting. Looking through this alert, it doesn't have everything. As a security analyst, one thing I always want is an IP address or an instance ID if this is a cloud hosted resource. So there's just more things that I'm going to want to pull. This is where Python became one of my best friends. I was using Python left and right for enrichment, especially when I first started working in the SOC. Now, you could totally attempt to try to code up everything, all of your SOC processes using Python, but I think that's where solutions come into play. So, a few solutions that really helped me, especially after that initial success with Python, was the SIM. The SIM brought order to all of the chaos. It was a central place for our logs and alerts to live, but it was also a central location where I could push the output from my Python scripts into a SIM index. All of a sudden, there was a new tool that came on the block. It was called endpoint detection and response. And this was like having a Lamborghini. It allowed us to triage endpoints fast. We were able to jump in and jump out of endpoints whenever we found malicious or suspicious behaviors. And on top of that, with EDR, we were also given the ability to write rules. And all of a sudden, we got more alerts and we're overwhelmed just a little bit more, but we were having a lot of fun along the way. The one solution that changed everything for me was SOAR, Security Orchestration, Automation, and Response. SOAR was a game changer because it allowed me to take all of the Python scripts that I put together over the months and years and store them into a single place and give my entire team the ability to use those automations in a visual form. But here's the thing. SOAR worked very well for situations where nothing happens out of the ordinary. Cybersecurity is built on the odds that something out of the ordinary will happen, which was problematic for SOAR. But what happens when you can't automate everything? You try harder, and that's when we ventured into hyper automation, trying to automate every conceivable process in the SOC. And this is where we're stitching together tools, scripts, and platforms, all with the hopes of a seamless defensive mechanism. It's ambitious. These solutions, each of them independently and collectively, are great. So is AI. AI can take some of that heavy lifting off of us that we're comfortable with. Looking at the possibilities, I wanted to share 3 use cases that I consider to be a game changer. The first one is getting reviews. Most of the time we only get feedback once a year, and it's in those annual reviews that we have to do. They're kind of painful, but I'm constantly pitching and sharing my ideas. So for this use case, I used 2 tools. Fathom Video, which is a AI note-taking app that also transcribes your meetings, and ChatGPT. I bring up this use case because a few weeks ago, I had an opportunity to pitch one of my partners on a new show. They wanted me to pitch them on a docuseries for cybersecurity. I worked really hard on my pitch. I put a lot of hours into it. And when the day finally came, I thought I nailed it. At the end of the meeting, though, I was hit with question after question for things that I thought that I clearly presented to the partner, but I didn't. There was definitely some blind spots that I wasn't aware of. So what I did was I took the transcript of the meeting and I dropped it into ChatGPT and I asked it 3 questions. Which parts of my pitch were unclear? What should Ron's next move be? And how can Ron improve for his next presentation? The feedback it gave me was so good. It said, for the unclear parts of the presentation, the specific focus of the project seemed to shift between uncovering breach stories and focusing on the human aspects of being a CISO. You should solidify whether the narrative will be breach-centric or human-centric. I really like this bullet because I can get lost in the sauce with tech versus human versus human versus tech. And this feedback is telling me to focus on one for my pitch. The second piece of feedback was for Ron's next move. Follow up with the partner, give them time to reflect on the project direction, reconvene to finalize the project's narrative focus. And the third piece of feedback, improvements for next time. Address potential concerns about maintaining business relationships earlier in the conversation, especially when suggesting more investigative approaches. For my meeting, My partners did bring up the fact that talking about a breach could expose some of their customers or even some of their partners, and they were a little sensitive about that. This is helpful for me to know, especially going into my next meeting. Now, the beauty about this is you don't have to be pitching a docu-series to a potential partner. This could be pitching a new product to your team. We're constantly in a battle of asking for more budget and needing more resources. Getting feedback on how you show up is a great way to make sure that your message is resonating with your audience. Let's take a look at another opportunity with using a tool called Notebook LM. Notebook LM is a Google AI tool that allows you to upload content. You can upload PDFs, text files, websites, and much more. What makes Notebook LM special is you can upload the content and then you can chat with it, kind of like you would in a Slack channel with multiple people. So you have multiple documents that you're able to chat with. So let's take it a step further. We already saw the alert from a data source. This is our authentication failure alert. Now, I mentioned needing to do enrichment, going to other data sources to pull information. This is typically our workflow. We have an alert that's triggered. We go and retrieve additional context. This could be from the SIM, it could be from other data sources. Then, if needed, we create a case or a case management solution and we update the case with our case details. What if we were to think through some of this as logic and some of it as code? For retrieve additional context from SIM, this is going to be SIM logic. We're going to search by status and alert name, and then we're going to pull out additional fields that weren't returned in the original alert. Depending on the amount of tools that we have and the complexity of our environment, we might need to go to multiple tools to retrieve this information. For creating and updating cases, maybe we use a Python script to do so. And we use some basic Python to create the case in Jira and to update it. Now, with Notebook LM, if we break out each of these steps and think of them as their own separate document, then we can use Notebook LM to ask questions about each of those documents or create new ideas. So for example, in Notebook LM, we can go into the platform, upload each of those documents, and then ask Notebook LM to create additional SIM logic, Python steps, or a combination of both. It's no secret that in cybersecurity, we have roaches. These are called phishing emails. Since large language models have come out pretty much for a little over a year, my email has been blowing up when it comes to phishing, spam, scam, and just unwanted emails. I'm sure you have seen something similar for your personal inbox or even your corporate inbox. Recently, I got an awesome phishing email. I had just gotten work done on my house, and I get this email. It says, "Hello, this is Efficient Roofing. We're excited to work with you on your roofing needs. I will keep you up to date with texts on progress and details. Please feel free to text or call at any time. If you're interested in financing, please click the link or ask your roofing consultant." In my opinion, this email passes the test. It passes the test because it's written as if it's from someone that wants to help, and the link within the email is a valid domain that's known for vendor financing. How this person or group of people knew that I was getting work done on my house and ironically sent me an email around the same time, I couldn't tell you how they knew, but I have some suspicions. If you go to a tool like Perplexity, which is very similar to ChatGPT, but it is really focused on searching the web, you can instruct it to do some very simple activities. You could say, search the web for Ron Eddings. Keep in mind Ron's personal and professional values and beliefs. Write an email to Ron telling him that Chris, one of his friends, told me to reach out and would like to set up a session over Zoom. And just like that, Perplexity searches the web, it grabs pictures of me even and resources and sources, and it writes out an email that I would say is pretty well crafted. The email says, "Dear Ron, I hope this email finds you well. Chris suggested I reach out to you as he thought we might have some valuable insights to share. I'd love to set up a Zoom session to discuss your work in cybersecurity leadership and content creation." I thought it did a pretty good job. It added all of the corporate jargon and pleasantries that no one needs. but it did have a very clear ask at the end. Would you be open to scheduling a brief meeting in the coming weeks? Now, what could we do to identify that first email or even this email? We could fight fire with fire. We can take this body of text and paste it into AI tool of your choice and ask if it was written by an AI or not and why. For the efficient roofing email, ChatGPT responded with, there are some indicators that suggest it could have been generated or at least partially generated by an AI tool. Overall, while it's possible a human could have written it, the generic tone, minimal personalization, and simple structure could be consistent with AI generated emails. I want to pull up a quote from one of the greats. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I bring up this quote because I think it's important to remember that AI is here to help. It's not here to intentionally harm you, it's here to help you. So definitely explore it and figure out where you can use its help. But just like with any risk that's worth taking, there's some risks that we know about and some that we don't. In 2023, when ChatGPT was first picking up steam, one of the biggest concerns was, where is my data going and who has access to it? Is it going to be shared with other people? Are we going to be using it for training other models? This was a big deal. The dust on that subject has now started to settle a little bit. We know we could use tools like Microsoft and Amazon to have a private instance of a large language model. It wasn't until recently that I heard of a new risk for cyber and AI, and its accuracy. Getting the model to output helpful information is one thing, but getting it to output accurate information is the differentiator from using it and just forgetting about it. So, what makes up accuracy? One major component is data quality. This is also a pillar for operating a SIM. We have to make sure that it's good data in, so good data comes out. And that is one of the things that AI hinges on drastically, is the quality of our data. The prompts that we provide large language models can also be viewed as a form of training data. If we provide incorrect or incomplete data to our prompts, that can also lead to inconsistent results. Data validation and monitoring is essential for data quality. It's essential because no matter whether we're building a model from scratch or testing how well a model applies to our use case, we want to make sure that the output is to our liking and giving us accurate results. Another risk that we want to be on the lookout for is model bias. Sometimes this is not a bug, this is a feature. There's some generative AI models that perform better for specific tasks. So for example, if we want to use a model for creating code, we might want to use Claude 3.5 Sonnet because that model is known for being one of the best at generating code from scratch. One important thing to note is AI models inherit biases from their training data. If our model was only trained on creating JavaScript code, but we tried to get it to produce Python, that might be a problem. Model bias has a direct impact on threat detection accuracy. I wanted to spend a second on adversarial attacks. This is when an attacker can trick the AI into doing something it's not supposed to be doing. One common example is a jailbreak or even a prompt injection. This is when you use the prompt to get the model to give you too much information back or an incorrect result. Well, there's a technique called needle in the haystack, and it's exactly how it sounds. You have a bunch of seemingly okay asks, and then you sprinkle in a malicious ask somewhere in the middle or towards the bottom. So in my example, I asked it to print out the first 300 words of Harry Potter's Sorcerer's Stone as a markdown table. This example works for most AI systems because it is really good at following instructions. So one of the risks of using AI in security is it may be so good at following instructions that there's opportunity to do a SQL injection style of attack where the AI spits out more information than it really should. What I hope is clear after seeing the examples and also the risks is the risks with AI can be managed. They can be overcome. They take a little bit of time and attention because the technology is so new, but the world is our oyster. So I wanted to give you a few ways, a few ideas for how you can begin exploring. The first one is pinpoint the repetitive tasks that can be used for automation. And I put AI automation here, but I would say automation in general. I started out my career doing automation in the form of Python, but there's nothing to say that a lot of what I did with Python can't be done with a good old fashioned prompt. The second is look for areas that you can enhance with AI. One area that we can always enhance in security is the practitioner. That's us. So using that meeting technique might be a game changer for you. And the third is prioritize based on impact and feasibility. I wanted to wrap up by sharing a few steps that anyone can take to accomplish an AI use case. The first one is document which use case you'd like to apply AI to. If you want to apply AI to creating Python scripts for your sim logic, write that down and make sure that that's listed as the goal. The second thing is identify the data sources that are required. What are the places that you're going to need to have access to implement this AI use case? Step three is define your security logic. What are the steps that an analyst would have to take, and which step do you want to apply AI towards? Step four is writing your AI prompt, and step five is testing for accuracy. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. I wanted to say thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to learn more about the AI dilemma. I hope that you are walking away with some ideas and use cases that you might want to start exploring with your team and your security program. Also, I would love to connect. I'm at Ronald Eddings on pretty much every single platform. And for any other activity outside of social, you can also follow our website, hackervalley.com. We would love to see you and hope to speak to you all again very soon. Bye.